organization in the past has recognized at some juncture the need for there to be a world organization in order to deal with this whole global social system that we engage in. In fact, one of the big contradictions that has existed historically in the communist movement as it reflects itself as has been reflected in Europe has been the notion of socialism in one country. How you have socialism in one country and capitalism is a world social system. So the party, the existence of the party, the advent of the party makes a profound statement about the significance of our place, our role in history, our role in the destruction of this parasitic socialism that we know as colonial capitalism. So I want to thank everybody for coming on to this meeting. And I want to remind everybody who is here also that from November 1st through the 3rd, the party will be conducting the first preliminary of the 7th Congress. Our 7th Congress that was held in October of last year, well, the first plenary for that will be happening in February, and that's important too. The Congress, of course, counted under the slogan Vanguard, the advanced attachment of the African Revolution, and this plenary is occurring under the slogan of Vanguard Up. The relationship with practice and theory. And this is really important for us to understand. I want to say that part of this discussion is the way it's happening at this very moment, the way we should understand it in this very moment, the way we should understand the party, the way we should understand our last Congress and the plenary that we're approaching is influenced very seriously by what is occurring in Bolivia. And we speak to Bolivia in part because Bolivia reflects a certain kind of crisis of understanding of revolution, successful revolution, anti-colonial struggle in the world. And it also reflects the crisis of an opportunist kind of liberal worldview that has plagued the struggle for revolution since the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 60s. I use the term Black Revolution of the 60s perhaps rather loosely, but I don't mean just something that happened in a particular place where African people are located. I'm talking about the whole struggle as it revealed itself in the world against imperialist white power. And that would have been what was happening in Cuba and throughout the Americas. That would have been what was happening all over Africa. That would have been happening inside the United States as well as in various places in Europe. The whole revolutionary movement suffered a very severe setback with assassinations, mass murder, mass arrest, the counterinsurgency being a dominant factor that has impacted the world consciousness, the whole concept of revolution, the thought of potential for revolution, what it should look like up to now, has been affected in a very serious way by the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 1960s. And that's something that I think when we look at what occurred in Bolivia with the coup that just occurred and the military movement against the President Morales and forcing him out of the country, the response by peoples around the world, many of them, defending the Bolivian government under the leadership of Morales, decrying and the coup, etc. But the fundamental problem that we're confronted with is the weakness of what has appeared to be like a revolutionary, what could be characterized as a revolutionary agenda. How the world has, and what is called the left in this country and in the United States and much of the world has conceded to imperialism, the continuation of the existing imperialist world order. How, at best, people have been trying to fight and find a way to have a happier, better life under imperialism as opposed to overturning imperialism itself. That has been how much of the world has functioned. And we don't hear the discussion revolution, haven't heard the discussion revolution, the call for revolution, whether in Venezuela, whether in Bolivia, whether in any other place that we can recognize. In fact, it is we that I'm only aware of as call for completing the Black Revolution of the 60s, which means to negate the effects of the defeat of the revolution and to rebuild a revolutionary sector on a much higher level than it was before. And part of what it is that we're looking at is even though we were able to talk about Bolivia being this progressive place, and it did offer progress. It did offer, for the first time in its history, the leadership of the indigenous people, first time in the history of Bolivia. Not in the history of that territory, not in the history of the Americas, but since the advent of European colonialism in South America, in the Americas, for the first time we see the rise through Morales and his movement for socialism, the authority, apparent authority of the indigenous people in form of controlling that government. But the problem, of course, that we should have learned by now, and most revolutionaries, I think, did learn by now, is that control of a government and being elected to office is not the same thing as having made a successful revolutionary transformation. That the same thing, we've seen this happen before. And in recent memory, we've seen it happen in Chile, where in the 1970s, the early 70s, the election of Allende, Salvador Allende as president of Chile, and the assumption that since the socialists had been elected, that meant that socialism had arrived. And of course, what happened was that many people, revolutionaries from throughout South America, went into Chile assuming that the socialism had occurred. And of course, it had not occurred because in Chile, there had been no revolution. There had been no capture of state power by Allende or anybody that he was associated with, and the state was still in the hands of the former neo-colonial power that was attached to the United States. And not only was Allende himself murdered by the military, but thousands of people, revolutionaries who were from throughout South America, were rounded up in soccer stadiums and executed, and many of whom people are still looking for their relatives since that time. That was in the 70s, but even before the 1970s, we saw what happened we assumed that with the ascendancy of Kwame Nkrumah to presidency in Ghana, that somehow it was a new day in Ghana. And of course, what happened is that Ghana assumed a control of the same state apparatus, that is to say, the same state was in place, the neo-colonial state that had been put there by the British and supplanted and supported by the United States government was still in place, and that state, under the influence and authority and leadership of the United States, overthrew Nkrumah. The same thing had happened in Congo with Lumumba, who it was assumed that the arrival of Lumumba and his election meant that the amazing things were going to happen for us, and that the foreign powers, the imperial powers, still controlled the military, that is the state apparatus, and that state working in the interest of the same forces as before, overthrew and murdered Patrice Lumumba. Similarly, we've just experienced this in Bolivia, and it's a frightening specter because these are lessons that should have been learned about anybody that's concerned with revolution. And of course, I think most revolutionaries did learn it. Problem being, of course, is that most of the revolutionary organizations were destroyed, wiped out, and memory, the historical memory of this has been removed, except for the African People's Socialist Party. That there is no power of the working class, there is no power of the people unless the people have possession of the state. And essentially, what we are looking for when we talk about the advent of socialism is the working class becoming the state itself. And then short of that, we're looking at some kind of democratic state that might emerge that's based on the democratic forces of a particular country that would be influenced in a very serious way, and if not led by the working class. That did not occur. And so in Bolivia, there is no, the people are scrambling, and the masses of people who want change and transformation are still struggling. But they're struggling without the leadership of an advanced detachment. They're struggling without the leadership of the party that is fighting to institute the dictatorship of the proletariat. In fact, from what I was able to glean from newspapers, if any of this is true, Comrade Morales was calling on his followers to not engage in violence, and that he's stating that he did not want to see violence fighting among Bolivian brothers, as it was characterized. But that certainly does not recognize that it's not just Bolivian brothers that are in this struggle. In fact, there's class war that's happening on the ground, and even recognition of class war would not be sufficient. To recognize class war is just one step that needs to be taken, as was taken later by Kwame Nkrumah after he was overthrown. But beyond that, the dictatorship of the proletariat, that is to say, the absolute authority and control of the working class through its functioning as the state is absolutely necessary if we're going to have the kind of change and transformation we need. I'm saying all of this because most of us work and do political work in a sea of opportunism, and by which we mean that the sacrifice of the long-term interests of the masses of working class for some short-term interests of a sector of the population in the African state bourgeoisie. And that's what we've been looking at. That's the struggle that we've involved ourselves in and find ourselves involved in every day as a matter of the political reality in this country and the United States and throughout the world. So I just think it's really important for us to recognize that, and it says something about our significance as a political party, and how when we talk about preparing to govern, it is real. The bourgeoisie, our oppressors, our enemies, they are very, 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 very serious. I cannot overstate that. And the aspirations of the people in Bolivia and other places which have been torched give credence to the significance of what it is that the working class has to do, what it is that we have to do, and why it is that we say vanguard up, which is a statement of standing up, and which is a statement calling on the vanguard to stand up. It means that a working class that's taught, that's trained on a regular basis to be, when it comes to our own interests, to be shiftless, to be to avoid sacrifice, to avoid struggle when it comes to our own interests, to look for protection within the shelter of the existing social order. This is stuff that the process of making revolution, we must abandon this and move forward. This is what vanguard up means, in part, that we move free ourselves from these kinds of contradictions that we find among oppressed peoples everywhere, and certainly among African people, when it comes to having confidence and willingness to do what's necessary for us to be victorious. Now, the African People's Socialist Party has been on this trajectory for a while now. And part of what we've understood for a while is that this whole struggle that we're engaged in, no matter how it may manifest itself on a political form, whether that's an armed struggle, whether it's protest demonstrations and electoral electoral politics, fundamentally, the struggle that we're involved in is the struggle to have possession of the ability to produce and reproduce life. And it's a struggle to have an economy that serves our own interests as a people. The struggle to be able to guarantee a material benefit, a material wealth for Africa and African people from whom the imperialists are stealing and raping resources on a daily basis. That's what the struggle is about. We're trying to institutionalize this. We're trying to teach and train our forces how to assume responsibility for the future. And we do this in very concrete ways. We have protocols and we make resolutions and we create mandates and things like that to propel us along a trajectory that will put power in our own hands as the working class and take away power from the oppressor. And the process of taking our own control of our own resources and growing our own economy, anti-colonial economy, independent of the control of our oppressors, is one of the most fundamental tasks that's before any people, any revolutionary people in the world. And in fact, that is the basis for the crisis, the primary crisis of imperialism, people taking back the resources from this damn parasite that's sucking the blood of us and everybody else in the world. And that requires, again, a certain discipline. It requires a willingness to make sacrifices and sometimes look for sacrifices to make as opposed to avoiding sacrifice and avoiding responsibilities and things like that. So this is part of what Vanguard Up means. This is sort of where we find ourselves today. And also, I just want to say in relationship to that African people do not have a future without Africa. And Africa is under serious assault. It's under diverse assault today. The whole world economy is in a state of reorganization. The imperial white power that has dominated the world for the last 500 years at least, that power is in disarray. It is in disarray in terms of contest among itself within the different national borders, state borders that it has created. It is in disarray in terms of the contradictions which have emerged within these artificial nation states throughout the white world. It is, and then at the same time this is happening, there are new forces who are emerging, new forces like China, who are aggressively beginning to challenge the U.S. For hegemony, not only in Asia, but also throughout Africa and various other places in the world, throughout the Middle East. You see Europe and Russia beginning to become an increasing force. And all of this enhances the destabilization of the existing social order. And people are debating, the bourgeoisie is debating among itself in various places around the world who will dominate the world now. Will it be China? Will it be the U.S., etc., with no assumptions that African people ourselves will be able to control our own lives and will take charge. And they are right in not assuming that unless we in the African People's Socialist Party do what is necessary to vanguard up and to grow this unity between practice and theory and to require it in every place that we are located. And to build a revolutionary project, and obviously to do everything that's necessary to unite Africa and the struggle of African people worldwide. So I just wanted to start it off with that, to open up with that, and I just think it's really important for us to understand some things about ourselves, because we are bigger than the location where the specific location that we occupy. The role of the party and the responsibility of the party is global. And those of us who are in this organization have required to have enough historical arrogance to assume that this world that we live in doesn't have to be this way, and that we know the way forward. That's what African internationalism is. It arms us to the teeth. Philosophically, we know the way forward, and we have the organizational structures and protocols. We have come from our Congresses with that established mandates and resolutions for us, and we're going again in February to the first plenary of the 7th Congress that will also provide greater leadership for us moving forward. So this is what I wanted to contribute to opening up this meeting that we're having on today. And I also just want to say that while this meeting is happening the way it is, that increasingly the foundation that the whole party stands on is in that community where you are located. Whether it's Everton West, right there in Houghton, or whether it's in the Fifth Ward in Houston, Texas, wherever it might be in specific locations around the world. The foundation for all of this work is there. And it is what we do in these places that will make the difference and make the determination of whether what it is that we're trying to do on an international level will be successful. Comrade. Vanguard up.
It's on mute. So.
Sure. What do we do? The agenda says that I should get on with the report, or the chairman expects discussion after.
Let's take the space for a brief discussion.
Okay.
One of the things, Comrade Secretary General, that I'm forced to face on a regular basis is that sometimes we have these discussions and we make the assumption that everybody is clear on what it is that we're talking about, and that's not the case. And so no one should hesitate to raise questions about any issue, any question that may not be understood. Say it, talk about it, and let's move this agenda forward because we have a lot of work to do. And the sooner we clarify all these issues for ourselves, the more effective our work is going to be. Uhuru.
Yes, so Chairman, maybe if you can just expand on one point. Africans, of course, do not see themselves as engaged in a new world order. We hear the African people every day saying, yeah, we have moved or we're moving into multipolar world. That's what you hear them saying. They shift multipolar?
Multipolar world, yeah.
Multipolar world.
Right.
That's what we have to really saying here.
Listen, comrade, here's what we're looking at. I'm glad you raised that, comrade, raising. Because now for certainly even before the advent of capitalism, even before the rise of capitalism, Europeans, or the people we now refer to as Europeans, have been in incessant war with each other, fights and wars, because it's normal. It's mind-boggling how this has occurred. And then, of course, with the advent of capitalism, we've seen a world order that revolved around the Vienna Congress that came after the Napoleonic Wars. This is in Europe. Napoleonic Wars, and that lasted for up until something like we call it the European, I think, concert or something like that. The Vienna Congress is what pulled this together, and then it was after the Napoleonic Wars where the Europeans redrew the borders of Europe and what have you, and say this is now Poland and this is now this country, that country, etc. And nobody should do anything and without putting in motion all the others of us against them. In other words, this was going to be the peace. This was the order. This was the world order that they had established. And then that lasted up until around 1917, when that was challenged and changed, and coming out of the first imperialist world war. Okay, Napoleonic War. Now the first imperialist war they call World War I. And then the Versailles Treaty, where the Europeans get together and say, okay, we're not going to have all this killing among ourselves. We're gonna make agreements on who can steal what, how the order is going to function to maintain the peace among ourselves. And this was the Versailles Treaty. And the Versailles Treaty created certain kinds of institutions in order to maintain stability among itself. But that only lasted, that was in 1917 or 1919, something to that effect. But by 1930, they were engaged in another so-called World War. and this led to, and that was to create one from their perspective, one world order. And then after the Second Imperialist World War, we see emerging forces like things like the United Nations, and coming out of that NATO and other kinds of alliances and trade relations, etc., that was binding Europe together as this coherent entity. And then, of course, the Soviet Union was there. So up until when we went through this whole process of after with the Vienna Treaty of Vienna or Congress of Vienna, we're talking about different world powers in Europe. And now these are the big powers in Europe who say this is what the relationship is going to look like. This is going to be the world order. And then coming out of that, with the defeat of Germany in the First Imperialist World War, the big powers got together again. This was, like England and France and Germany. Germany, was on the bottom of the totem pole after the First Imperialist World War with the Versailles Treaty, and now Russia becomes a factor. So you still got all these different powers that are contending, and each of which has to give some kind of relevance and appreciation to the other, so they can't do exactly what they want to do. This is an order, a world order. And then coming out of that, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, then you heard George W. Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush talking about a new world order. There's a whole new world order. And Clinton tried to pursue that with the assumption that now that the Soviet Union was dead, the United States could do what it wanted to do. And so instead of these multi-poles, instead of these different sectors of that was now controlling the world was going to be controlled by just one entity, and that was going to be the United States. So this is the arrogance that they assumed. The first arrogance that was to assume that Europe dominates the world. The second was to from different poles. And the second was to assume now that with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the United States was going to dominate the world. And then, of course, fundamentally, it limits the significance of everybody else in the whole world. So there's no assumption that a world order, a multipolar, does not mean Africa was going to be a part of the pole. It does not mean that the people in South America were going to be occupying some power pole or some power relation. And right now, when they mean multipolar, they're talking about a multipolar world that could possibly, the Russians pursued this. Now China is a factor, the United States is a factor, and they're talking about an agreement and relationship between these different forces. And those of us who do have no faith in the future of our own future and our own ability to determine what the world is going to look like from our perspective and in our interest, find ourselves huddling up to or trying to unite with this multipolar world order as being as being significant. So, like right now, we find in Africa, China is a factor. So people feel like they can unite with China in a way to balance off against the United States. So the United States and France and Europe, the colonial powers now are being challenged in terms of economic and political influence in Africa by China. And this is the thing. They're being challenged by China to the greatest extent, but none of them is being challenged by the advent of actual revolutionary African presence, formation, process, trajectory. And that's what we are about, creating a revolutionary trajectory to determine the future of Africa. Damn the Poles, damn the Chinese, damn the others. We are concerned about them. We are aware of their presence, but we know that the future has to be in our own hands, and that's the fundamental thing. I don't know if that spoke effectively to what you were talking about, Carmen Louis.
That's more than that. Thank you, Sheriff.
All right,
Okay. Anyone else?
Good, comrades. These are discussions. It is not assumed that somebody in the Fifth Ward of Houston, Texas, will be having this kind of discussion. or somebody who's in Everton West will be having these discussions. These are discussions that's supposed to be having by the thinking representative of white power, of imperialist powers, or increasingly China and what have you. And what we're saying is that we can arm our people to the teeth. We have to make a revolution. As I say, the class has to be conscious of what its own interests are, and that we have to produce revolutionary working class intellectuals. And when I say intellectuals, I don't mean that we have to have people who talk like big shots or something to that effect, but who can understand the world and the basic principles that's governing activity of the peoples of the world, and also can see the future. And that's the critical thing, to be able to see the future. And the future that we see is one that we predict as a liberated future, but we don't just make that prediction. It's not just some abstract prediction we make. We make a prediction, and we know that it is going to happen because the political line is correct and it's consistent with how the future has to move. And then two, we have the political organization and cadre that's going to make that happen. And human beings have to assume responsibility for changing the world, and that's what we're asking members of the African People's Socialist Party to recognize and to accept the responsibility as the advanced detachment, as vanguard. Each of us must assume that responsibility and assume the responsibility for changing this world.
Well, one more question from me, Chairman. Just if you can sum up what's happening with the impeachment with Donald Trump. How should Africans understand?
That's a really important issue because what is happening now is there's a big old struggle that's happening within the ruling class in this country, but it's a part of the whole international ruling class. Because we're talking about impeachment in the United States with Donald Trump, we're talking about Brexit, however, in Europe. And what's happening with England and Europe, they're the same more or less phenomenon, and it's happening all over Europe, not just with Brexit and what have you. So the entire order is now under extraordinary stress, and it is in a state of accelerating dissolution. And part of what's happening is that in the United States, this world order that I was just talking about, that has existed especially since the end of the Second and British World War. Where the so-called Atlanticists assume authority not only in the United States but throughout the world, throughout the European world. And they set up all these different trade agreements, and they set up these institutions like the United Nations and NATO, et cetera, to advance their interests. And they're tied, most European powers and countries are tied to them in 1,000 different ways, 1,000 tiny threads, militaries, and not just, overt military forces, but covert forces, intelligence organizations. All of them are tied to this trade relationships, trade protocols, et cetera, tied to this order. And what happened, of course, is that it is an order that's been under stress because of people taking back their resources, fighting. The future is changing right under their feet, and part of that future is what people are willing to do in Afghanistan to take their resources in Iran, Iraq, et cetera, but also the contest that's going between Russia and China and all these other forces makes the pie much smaller than that they're all competing to control. And so now you got different sectors of the bourgeoisie who are emerging to fight for their share. And in the United States, what has happened is that the Atlanticists, that you had this guy, Donald Trump, who, unlike the others who ran for presidency, funded much of his own his own campaign, and was able to win much momentum from his television presence, personality, etc., to the point that before the bourgeoisie understood how dangerous he was, what a threat, a problem he was, that he could actually win an election, he had picked up enough mass support from white people in this country that made it almost impossible for them to initially overthrow him, to do something to him. But he challenged all of the rules. He challenged NATO. He came out in opposition. NATO is opposed to the United Nations. He's opposed to the trade relationships that exist between all of these different countries. He's opposed all of those things. But he's not a party. he doesn't have his own party. He never had his own party. So what he's done is into his own government, he's had to bring into sectors of the Atlanticist and traditional sectors of the bourgeoisie. So that's why he's firing them all the time. He's getting rid of them. There's this crisis, that crisis, and also he has not control of the state, absolute control of the state apparatus itself, which is the CIA, the FBI, the National Security Agency, and these other entities, Homeland Security. So you see all these contradictions. You see the state itself. Right now, you see hearings where elements from the bourgeois state, from the colonial state, are testifying against this guy. So this guy is the president. That's to say, he is the president, but he doesn't control the state. And the state, of course, is the organization of coercion that makes every determination, the military, the courts, and all of that stuff. And so this is part of the contradiction that we're looking at. And then Trump, of course, has used his position as president to try and buy a whole huge sectors of the bourgeoisie. He's given them trillions of dollars in tax relief and stuff like that. He is trying to establish a different kind of relationship with Russia with an assumption that people who are with him with the Russia thing are also people who had economic relationships and deals that they were trying to make in Russia. So you have the Atlanticist moving in one trajectory with one common thing. And remember, the Atlanticists came together in part in opposition to Soviet Russia. And so now Russia is seen to be this place that for some in the Trump administration that they can go and they can loot, they can get rich, they can open up a whole different economic front. So what we see here in the United States, and this is a real shallow description of the reality that we're talking about, but part of what it is that we see is this contest that's happening between different sectors of the bourgeoisie, of the ruling class. There's all this stuff about fighting for, because he said that he was going to use the government of Ukraine, he was going to deny them aid unless they help to put dirt on Joe Biden and Joe Biden's son. I mean, what is this? What is this? I mean, with none of them, not Sanders, Barry, what's the Sanders guy's name? Bernie Sanders, none of it, Kamala Harris, none of them. And he is condemning Trump and saying, let's impeach him because of the illegal wars that he's making against people in Yemen, how he's facilitating that. None of them is criticizing Trump for what he's doing to destabilize Iran, what he's doing to stop people in Venezuela. None of these stuff like that, or the fact that he hasn't put a cap on the amount of police murders, or the fact that there's mass incarceration of African people, none of this stuff ever gets discussed. Only thing that gets discussed, the bourgeoisie is united with all the other things. They're united with what he's doing in Iran. They're united with the attacks on China. They're united with what he's doing in Yemen. They're united with what he's doing in every place else except Afghanistan, because he seems to be coming out of Afghanistan or talked about coming out of Afghanistan. So there is no, this whole impeachment thing is a struggle within the bourgeoisie that's designed to cripple Trump, to make it impossible for him to govern, or to put the guy that they have put on the bench in the first place to come in once they get rid of him, to put Pence in place to represent the interest of the bourgeoisie. But I would tell you this, that even if they succeed in getting rid of Trump, it's too late to reverse the course that Trump has participated in creating, and that history has influenced as well. Anybody else coming in? I know we're taking a while here, but I think it's important.
This is yesterday.
Yes, yesterday.
I just want to appreciate the overview and the explanation and the struggle for the emancipation of the African working class to really engage in these observations and know what's going on in the world and actually see ourselves as leading the African Revolution and how that relates to everything that is going on, and having and forming an analysis that is based on African internationalism that will contend with what is going on in the world, but also build the capacity of African people to be at the point where we can be a factor in liberating not only the world but ourselves. And I just think that everything that you have been pouring into us in terms of like really being cadre, not allowing for this excuse or that excuse or liberalism to overtake what our responsibilities are. We need to get rid of all of that, because that's just something that I feel is plaguing the party, is the question of liberalism and not really seeing ourselves as the advanced attachment, as significant to building the African revolution, and not willing in some cases to do the work that's possible to actually build, leaders of Africans to take on the whole question. It's always a question of how many tasks we have to take on, and I'm guilty of that in many instances. But I just think that even what you're saying in terms of Trump and how the world, being outside of the country, is really interesting to see how people perceive the United States. They think it's a dangerous place for Africans, and they're right. They think that, what's going on over there in America, I'm afraid to go to that country. I'm not, America's shit. It's really interesting to see how people outside of this place really see it, but not really saying anything about what is happening in terms of any revolutionary forces that are coming out of the United States or anywhere else that are building a real opposition to Trump. And so I just think that the time is now for the party, and the time has always been for the party to emerge. I think that in this process we have to see everything that we're engaged in, the building for the plenary, the building for the community and the convention, and everything else as a way to really strengthen the position of the party and do the recruitment work that's necessary, because everybody's talking about it, and we have to be able to, give it to the people in a way that we all can understand. Because, like you said, the white bourgeoisie is talking about it. We have to be able to talk about it and translate that to the people so that we can really recruit and bring people into our ranks.
Who will come at? Anyone else come at?
Uhuru, this is Justin out of San Diego.
Uhuru, Justin.
Uhuru, Chairman. I just, really, really want to appreciate the overview and the seriousness and the urgency that's put on the party. Just understanding that everywhere we turn, everybody's talking about politics, revolution, and all these different things. But the truth is that the masses of Africans, all the information that they're getting is from, the bourgeois media. And so, people are seeing the collapse of imperialism. The African brothers telling me how they say by basically there's the Federal Reserve is pumping $50 billion a day into all these banks, and the public information that the economy, people are saying the economy is going to collapse by the end of the year. With Trump being impeached, a lot of African people are really seeing the decimation of America, but they don't see a way, a way of what we're doing. And and I just wanted to say that, can you speak to that? Because I know that we continue to say Uhuru in our lifetime, and we see that this system is going to collapse, but we don't have a time frame. So for African people who are seeing this shit's going to happen within the next year, or by the time 2020 ends, this the economy is going to collapse. So really, I'm asking, do you see any truth in that? And then also, what does that mean for the party? That this is
I want to say a couple of things. One, there's no way of saying that the economy is going to collapse in a year. I mean, you can see signs of serious signs, contradictions. I mean, the falling debt, among other things, but there are other, no manufacturing of was what speak up in the United States. But the other thing about that is, again, capitalism is a global system. To say that the economy might collapse in a year, and it could. Let me just be on record as saying it's possible. But what does it mean if the U.S. economy collapses in a year?
Yeah.
Part of what it means is that China as a political and economic force becomes even more powerful, and that what is the economy here will be tied more into a Chinese-dominated world economy.
Yep.
So that's just to say that the U.S. economy may collapse is not the statement of necessarily of some kind of progress for us. And I believe the U.S. economy could collapse, but it's a world economy.
Yes.
And it's a world economy where you have a situation if a hurricane happens or a snowstorm happens in a particular part of the economy, it affects the country, it affects the economy tremendously. If something happens in one part of the world now, because that's what they call globalization, it affects the whole international economy in a certain way. So it's possible that that could happen. And but the thing is, if it does happen, it doesn't. What has to happen for us is to build a revolutionary party. Is to have the party on the ground and to have those of us who are here. We have created in the African People's Socialist Party something, as far as I know, has never existed before. And that we're still trying to expand it and grow it. And our capacity to expand it and grow it depends on our ability to build cadre. Cadre, for example, we have economic institutions that need to be all over the world. But it's hard to move them because in many instances, the Africans who are in the economic institutions treat the institutions as corrupt in it. They do all kinds of stuff that undermines the ability of us to have our own power. Because that's how they've been trained to treat it through colonialism. And so what I'm saying is that a fundamental task for us is for us to muscle up and to do what it is that we have to do as cadre or quit the party, which is really a principal thing to do. If you can't say, I can't do it, I quit. But don't stay here as the kind of people that we need to be able to run these institutions, to expand and the presence of the party. And because the institution that we're trying to create are anti-colonial institutions. So we're trying to build a future even as we are destroying this imperialist present, the imperialist past. We are creating the future. And to do that, that's where cadre is required. Yes. That's where making the sacrifices necessary. Staying up later than everybody else, getting there earlier than everybody else, working harder than everybody else, studying harder than everybody else, making the necessary sacrifices, doing the amount of work. That's what cadre is. To be able to see the future. And the reason you can do this is because you can see the future. And I'm trying to recover now from some kind of flu-like bug I've had. And the only thing that's kept me from ending it all is because I can see the future. And I know that a flu lasts on the average 7-10 days or something like that. And after that, it's going to be over. We have to have the ability to see the future, to see beyond the present. And that's what cadre is. That's why we're having this discussion now. So to arm our forces so we can see beyond the present, be able to make a prediction of the future and to make sure that prediction is real by carrying it out ourselves. Uhuru.
Oh, for real.
Anybody else come in? Tafari, are you there?
You hit the thing. Uhuru, Chairman, I believe they're on YouTube. There was some issues with Skype.
So what does that mean? Do they have the ability to hear and say anything?
They have the ability to hear. I would need for them to type in the chat box any discussion. So.
Well, ask them to type in the chat box any discussion. If they can hear me, I'm asking that now. Okay. Anybody else, Comrade?
Uhuru, Chairman. Well, there is Comrade Adam from Rotterdam, Netherlands. And he asked, African political life, by and large, is plagued by tribalism and regionalism, which are serious obstacles to African unity. Are there ways to develop the needed African consciousness?
Yeah, the war for African national consciousness, that's what we're talking about, the whole so-called national question. That's because all nations have, several different identities, within a nation. But the primary identity is the nation itself, the national identity, African, and that's what we have to fight for on every level, in Rotterdam and every place else. And also, I just wanted to say, Comrade Adam, you gave as an example in the discussion that we had the other day about Bolivia, the Venezuelan model, I think you called it about the unity between the state and the military. And I'm saying that that's shaky. That's a shaky foundation. The best example we can give is the Cuban Revolution. Because the Cuban Revolution was a revolution. And the Cuban Revolution destroyed the military apparatus that had been established before it. It crushed it, wiped it out. It didn't exist anymore. And not only did it destroy the military apparatus, the state apparatus, it even executed many of the people who were forced. That's what Che Guevara's job was after the Cuban Revolution, was to execute, to carry out the executions of many of those folks who functioned within that state apparatus. And so Cuba broke the back of the neo-colonial state apparatus and put in place its own state apparatus, which is why it's less likely that you would see what happened in Bolivia happen in Cuba, but you also saw it happen in Venezuela. And if you remember correctly, where they had actually overthrown the military, overthrown Chavez. And I'm told that it was the influence of Fidel Castro and of course the masses of people on the ground in Venezuela that forced the military to do the right thing. So I'm not sure that this concept of the civic and military unity is the best concept. The real question that we're confronted with is the question of who has state power, who controls state power, whether it's the bourgeoisie, whether it's the working class, or whether it is a revolutionary national democratic revolution that has placed the power in the hands of a revolutionary national democratic force that may be Venezuela is. I don't know. What I'm saying is the concept of a civic and military. I don't understand that. So, but the struggle has to be. The struggle has to be.
Somebody needs to mute.
Please mute, Conrad. Please. Yeah. If you're not talking, mute. Yeah, the struggle has to be for African nationalism, for African national identity. And that has to be wherever we are. Whether we're in Rotterdam, whether we're in New Jersey, whether we are in France or England, we are Africans. And that's fundamental. That's the fundamental identity. And that's not going to be the only thing that's going to rescue us, because as you know, Africa is rife with traitors and sellouts and neo-colonial forces as well. But that movement toward liquidating the ability of this tribal and this ethnic and regional and even religious concerns becoming the dominant force. So, all right. I know we've been here for quite a while. So, just about an hour now. We've just dealt with that. I want to just say, unless there's anything else, and I want to make the space be there for somebody else who might want to say something before we move on with this agenda. Nothing. So did we get anything from the comrades in South Africa?
We've heard nothing yet.
Okay, so is there anything from Comrade Kalambai? All right.
Oh, sure. I had to take myself off mute. I was on mute. I just really want to appreciate the overview and unite with it, and everything that we see, in the world, and, just looking at the terrain here in St. Louis and beyond that, wherever EPDM is in the masses, that we have to build social movement, and that's going to take cadre, and that's the party. And so I just really unite with the political report. I know on the IEC and in the region, we just been really digging in and highlighting and, coming one with every word of the political report, because I think that it really explains exactly what cadre has to do, and the region strategy and these hubs and these EPDM office and tables and selling spirits is just what, what we need to do. Like, we have to struggle, we have to make the necessary sacrifice and really dig in and not stray away from our manuals. I was in a meeting in San Diego, and I was struck that they had political education on the manual, and it's just so profound
to just go and just like really look at our manuals on how to do outreach, check and load list, and just being experts at what it takes to lead the masses into political life. And it's not a question if we are, we have to.
Comrade. Thank you so much. So let's move forward and Comrade Secretary General Luisi, we really love to have a report to you from the conference that you just attended in Venezuela. I think it was characterized as the first international conference of Afro-descendants or something to that effect.
Yes, sir, Chairman. Yeah, it was called International Congress of Afro-descendants. And it was organized between the 9th and the 12th of November by the Socialist United Party of Venezuela, which is the party of the Chavistas, or the main party of the Chavistas and of Nicolas Maduro. And I got a short notice, basically, and then what's happening, I wasn't aware of it. So within a week, we have to sort out everything to get there. And so we go there on the 9th, I left on the 9th and, in the morning, and early in the morning, and we go there in the afternoon around 3:30, something like that. And it was important to be there, because you can really see the significance of the party when it's being tested. You are in a new environment. I've never been there before. And it's a place rich for history, since Venezuela is one of the key countries that the United States is trying to overturn. And the reason is quite clear. They have the largest certified gold reserve as a country. Also the largest certified oil reserve as a country. And they have the 4th largest gas certified. This also, basically all these things are the reasons the United States is trying to overturn the government of Nicolas Maduro. As the chairman said all along, they're trying to get back the resources that are being denied to them by the governments of Chavez and also of Nicolas Maduro. So being there, I was really looking forward to see what I can learn from them. Like in terms of data development, what's the meaning of revolution on the ground there. So I'm trying to see what I can learn there. So on the first day of the conference, I was quite surprised that things were very tight in terms of programs. In fact, the morning session was abandoned. There was an improvisation. Those who want to go to the book fair would go to the book fair, but there was no plan in the program. So the program started only after lunch. So that half a day gone. And for something so big and organized with all the resources you can get from a party in power, that wasn't good for me. And the title of the conference itself, the Congress of Afro-descendants, is problematic, because you are in a place where you have some 200 something, maybe 300 people, Africans, and they refer to themselves as Afro-descendants. And that's a contradiction in terms of itself, because you look around, you only see Africans. But throughout that term, Afro-descendant. And it is really where you see the development of Afro-internationalism. We have to fight for one identity, who we are, African people, because it's necessary. We're going to unite all African struggles to build the African nation. We have to be clear on the question of identity. And I don't feel this conference will help develop that concept of the necessity to be Africans and to fight for one Africa. I didn't really get that from the conference. And also being in that part of the world, you would like to see definitely, let's say, two things. One is the historical continuum in terms of a revolution, in so-called Latin America, the lessons of the Cuban Revolution, the lessons the chairman just mentioned of what happened to Chile, where Allende was bombed by the U.S., funded Pinochet forces. What I learned from that. And you would like to see on the tables political materials, and how they practice opportunism. They're in fact they're going to what they call over there right-wing forces. What they want you to learn from the tactics that develops. Basically you want to learn. They want to share with you the experience on the ground, how they develop the force, how they're organizing, all these. No, there was nothing like that. You only know the statistics that you can get from the internet, the patches they had, to solve problems of poverty, which they've done quite well. Things like that, they build thousands of schools, they build even doctors. Yes, all these things you can get from the internet. But on the ground, how are you developing the political forces so that the revolution can be completed? Things like that. In fact, you don't really hear discussion of where the Bolivarian, as I refer to it, where is the Bolivarian revolution now, and where it needs to go, what the mistakes are made, that we should not make elsewhere, things like that. There's summation of the whole process, and renewal of activities, more clarity, things like that. I couldn't get that. And introduction of the members of the party, telling us the person is in charge of this is the person, many times you go ask, who is this guy? In fact, I'm just trying to put names on everybody, and I didn't see those kind of things. But one thing is what clear. African population is more than 15%. I don't know exactly what, is more than 50%. And in terms of election, I guess this mobilization definitely reinforces that, because what it does, it opens Africans from Venezuela, it puts them in connection to Africans around the world. From Colombia, from Bolivia, from Guinea-Bissau, from France, from Germany, from the United States, from Jamaica, you name it. And this was emotional, quite powerful experience, for Africans from Venezuela, watching on the TV, knowing that Africans are coming to unite with them and things like that. So the necessity basically to have the key question, the urgent question on the table, how the whole process is going to move forward. We all understand that we have to be in solidarity. In fact, Venezuela has a solidarity. Most of the Africans are in solidarity with Venezuela, based on just what they have heard from Chavez, the achievement they have done. For example, when you walk on the street of Venezuela, it's clean. It's not like when you see in Sierra Leone, Dakar, Kinshasa, all those places, when you're in Africa, you just wonder, what's this? Over there, everything gets clean. They clean all the time. I mean, it's impossible to go to Jamaica, Congo, Senegal, Sierra Leone, not to be beaten by mosquitoes. And I went there for 5 days. I came back. I was not beaten by any mosquito. In fact, I became sick because I sat next to two white people on the plane who had cold or something like that. That's the only time I became sick. But while I was there, no mosquito bit me. And I didn't see much flies, no more than 5 flies, which just unthinkable when you are in Africa. So these are things people can see, they can experience with the leadership of Venezuela. How it's done. We done it before that, but we won't make a revolution. We won't end the system. And you hear the political language. They're against racism. They're against nazism. They're against fascism. That's what we hear in the language. But of course, they say they are decolonial, imperialism, all these things in one go, in one bag. You hear that all the time. So really, you can't come from those meetings and you say you're clear. Citizen is the main issue. You can't, you will not come like that. You're more likely to pick up one thing. Maybe strike against racism could be the main thing at the end, because that is really from every leader who spoke, including the president, you hear that over and over and over. When the reality is imperialism. Even the document they sent us, and that document puts imperialism as the highest stage of development of capitalism, something like that. Which already chairman has dealt with. So these basically underlines what I was there, the necessity to have all materials in more languages. This is a revolutionary demand and thoughts in Spanish, because I was never Spanish spirit, but people not everyone speaks English, especially the local ones, and so the material in languages other people can speak in their political website, in different languages. I mean, these are all topics of problem, and these are the kind of things the government in Venezuela could say, we can facilitate that because we want development. We want other states to be developed. And we, because they will have had this kind of information. Who are the forces that are coming to Venezuela? What is the level of development? What can they contribute to the process inside Venezuela? I didn't say all that. So I have to struggle with the organizer, the one who I'm in touch with. I say, this is what you should do. This is what you should do. You just, you can get in touch with the chairman. The chairman. Ask him how long you've been chairman. You have been in contact. Of course, you haven't been in contact for a while. And he said, okay, I propose to you, for example, on restoration. Everyone's talking about here. The chairman introduced that, create the modern restoration movement. And I talked about the tribunal and things like that. And he said we should make a proposal and send it there. But if the structure don't develop, there have to be definitely engaged or they have to recognize the role of the party. That's the struggle itself, because what the problem is there are patriotic forces, an alliance of workers, peasants, and the local people who do too. But who leads that coalition? That's the question. Who leads it? I don't know much about the party of Socialist. That's something we have to deepen my understanding. But who leads it? But one thing sure, nobody was calling for deepening the revolution, deepening the struggle against the opportunities inside Venezuela. Because while we were in the meeting, we heard about the coup. In fact, the presentation was being made by the deputy leader of the Socialist party. He himself a general or a former general. So he broke the news, and so of course people were shocked. But the general assumption, from what he said, and also from what the President Maduro said when he phoned in the conference, so he spoke to the conference by telephone, they said this will not, basically, the coup will not happen in Venezuela, and maybe that's really exactly what they said. I haven't, because I've been compiling a report, but every time I'm adding things, I haven't finished the debate, but I've written that I want to read to you. Let me see if I can find it quickly. No, I don't know what's time, but basically, what he said, one thing that works in the favor is the alliance, the unity between the military and the people. You heard the chairman making comments on that, and that's what he said in that conference. The president said himself, the unity between the people in the military. It's true, Chavez politicized the army, want a lot of officers to be on the side of their workers and peasants on. But this is not the same thing as to smash the old colonial state of Venezuela. It's not the same thing. To win, to undermine the army state, yes. But the final battle has to be the smashing of the old apparatus, so you have a new one. A new one with the workers on. The same workers will be doing the patrols, in the community. That is the same one also the factories, they work in the morning, you have to do, they are in arms, which is not difficult thing to do because there are so many young people there with weapons and including young women, like in the early 20s, doing security, carrying guns on their waist. It's quite impressive to see when they're so young as well. But it doesn't mean the old colonial army has to be smashed. It doesn't mean that. And for revolution to happen, one thing is the colonial state has to go. And it has not been overthrown in Venezuela. And that's what all of us should be clear about. And if we have to make contributions, that's the criticism we have to make. Hopefully, there will be open to criticism because we want Venezuela to succeed. We want revolution to succeed. Venezuela is in the interest of all 490 oppressed people in the world. We don't want any setback. Actually, when the lessons we learn are already available, And so that's something that all of us should be really concerned about. So the other thing is, when we talk about meeting gathering, that's the professionalism of gathering, how we conduct our meetings, how we prioritize our points and things like that. It's a critical because while I'm there, I see someone speaking, and you have so many spontaneous music, which is not needed. We can sing one, twice, you know music, not continuously, to the point I can't really hear what the speakers are saying, because first you go deal with, the translators, and then the sound of the Africans singing in the room, and you just drown in the sound. You don't know what to say. You don't know even what the translators say because the music is back on. And the agenda should be tight. Please, besides, we want you English, English meeting to come out of this, and that. And there was an opportunity really for me to speak because we were not invited, as a speaker and something like that, to be part of the workshop. And when you're in a workshop, there are over 60 people who have to speak. That means more than 2 hours, 4 hours, just something like that for the workshop. So, and we put out on the cards what we would like to see in the workshop I participated. Now, of course, the African descendant, it should be just one single African identity for all of us. Withdraw all the U.S. troops in Africa. Africa must be out of Africa. We should have a war tribunal on reparation in Venezuela. As a part of this process, forgot the other points, but I have them on my notes. So, and if you say that, it doesn't mean it should be adopted because they collect everything and then we make it in the final result. So I haven't seen even final conclusion in English. One development in Spanish. We have for English, one I haven't received that yet. So that's also something else. So what I did during my break time, one South Africa, I engaged him, straight reaction. He said, Silvio was a fool. I mean, who's this guy? How did you get here? I took the night force from Guinea-Bissau. He's against the bar. I said, how did you get here if you're against the bar? So this gives you an idea we had this people from Brazil, which is an innovation, pouring so much water on the floor, and we're not outside. This is a carpet, and putting water on the carpet, everybody knows you don't put water on the carpet, and particularly a lot of water, and things like that, just because you have to do an innovation, and it's a lot of innovation, and things like that. Those spiritual forces, Pan-Africans were there, I think there were 3 or 2 nights, I'm not sure, 2 nights at least, people have to have a party, music and dance, and plus the last day, people having good time, hugging, kissing, all kind of stuff. I mean, we are in a place where they are think we are attacked by the United States. In fact, they are being attacked, people are being killed. You all know about the manipulation of the currencies, the attack on the bank, money. The U.S. doesn't allow payments, and it's late, which means product that the Venezuela government needs for the people like medicine will get late or will not get there at all. The British government will refuse to return Venezuela. So fighting another form of war is there. And we are having 3 meals a day, and we've been served by people who don't probably have 3 meals a day. If they do, they get meals as subsidies, because school is free, health is free, but the minimum wage, I think, is 150,000 bolivar, which then is still to be $3, which is legal. And what makes the difference is all those basic necessities like education, medicine being free, and the government, giving some subsidies for food, for protein stuff, things like that. That makes really the difference. So basically, we have these workers serving us. And I can hear people complaining we're eating the same food every day. You just being there for 5 days, and you complaining for having chicken every day. And when most of people in the world don't have access to protein from chicken. People have 1 meal a day, you're being free. It is unbelievable. So I saw people at the airport complaining that you're charging me too much. The difference is being $1. When you didn't pay for your flight ticket, you didn't pay for your meal. So I had discussions with North Africans, but generally speaking, whenever we put African internationalism there, we go support. So I have the contacts, but what I need to do is do a report on who should be a boss, like the sister from Belize, Yaya Marine Coleman. She read the articles about the Irish settlement order. And the following day, she just came to me saying, so interesting. I say, you should go and say, she's open to it. So that kind of person we need to pursue. I'll make another post from Jamaica. He knows of the chairman. He was in Tanzania with the PhD. So he introduced me from another member of the PhD who lives in Venezuela for 11 years. They are all interested. Person from Grenada, interested. Person from Colombia, interested. In fact, the one who told me about international conferences happening next year. What's the name? One I don't remember the date. I have everything on my report yet. So basically, I'm convinced to support the arts. New development is possible, provided we by I can hear it clapping, but somebody to mute because I got myself here.
Please mute if you're not mute.
Yeah, we need to be disciplined, comrade. If someone's listening, there will know to come from them. Yeah, so I think the contact, some of them do promising the Nicaragua, that's maybe for APEC. The government is supporting the African community in Nicaragua for herbal medicine. And she was really anxious to know that we knew about Nicaragua, that we even went there, the second went there, so all these contacts are available to us. So we thought, we really need to get material, and we also need to move as quick as we can to those places to see exactly what we have. What can we come from there? We have to find a way of doing it, but yeah, that's some some of the things I can say. I have no doubt that the international revolution, the African revolution in particular, is the best alive, the best strength, the best guarantee of the Venezuelan society. In fact, I had a discussion with the government, one government in Cuba. So on the identity, it was a winning debate, but you could see at the end, he's a professor somewhere in Cuba, a contact also I have it, because she was saying the question of identity is complex because of the mixing that we went through. So we discussed almost for 1 hour. That's that question, and at the end, she conceded, she agreed, and we left up in good terms and still make contact and hope to hear from here and stuff. And so, yeah, that's what I can say. But I think when I finish the report, I will be more concise, but I can just underline the necessity really of getting as the body's material, why we are possible, equal languages, and also good possibilities for us to be in the mix. Wherever there is a space for us to be, we should take it and get there and win and consolidate, and people can be part of this United African Revolutionary about. Or
thank you, Comrade Luigi. I want to thank you for that report. And what we'll do is, as much of this as possible, when we get the reports from Comrade Luigi and others, what we'll do is we'll make this particular report accessible to the party organizations of the world. I want to go ahead and move the agenda. First of all, just to say that for those of you who didn't know, in the United States, there's been change in the Central Committee here. As you know, as we have every place, we've moved towards a regional strategy. And in the United States, there are 4 regions, and one of which is the Midwest region. In the Midwest region, during the Congress, one person, Chicago Wakarima, was elected to the Central Committee, representing the Midwest region. And just about a year from that time, October, she was removed from that position. She was removed from that position because of a serious kind of disunity that was manifest in a lot of different ways. And she was replaced in that position by Comrade Malika Alexander, who is now the interim Midwest regional leader. In the Western region of the United States, there was no regional leader, and we have appointed Comrade Bakri Olatunji, who is in this meeting, to the Western interim Western regional leadership. So I wanted to let people know about that. So Chicago Wakarima is no longer a member of the Central Committee of the African People's Socialist Party, and she does not represent the Midwest region, and that is now something that is currently being led by Malika Alexander and Comrade Bakri Olatunji as the interim Western regional leadership. I wanted to put that forward. And moving forward, just want to offer up a few minutes for people to just say a little bit about what's going on where you are. And we're going to start off in San Diego with Comrade Jasun. Jasun.
Okay. So let's start this one. Okay, so San Diego has focused on the strategy to build the party by building a PETA. Our primary focus on building a PETA are the African Starts Genocide Campaign, Black Community Control of Schools, and Black Community Control of Police. We've recruited 13 members to PETA in 2019, 7 members since the convention. We've created an African Starts Genocide working group that we named Black Power at the Border, which we're doing weekly outreach in Tijuana, across the border with Africans that are, an influx of, thousands of Africans right there. And what we're doing, we've been printing propaganda in Creole, Spanish, and French, specifically, the About and Freedom and the article around the Haitian Revolution. We've been bringing burning spears down there. People have been taking them and reading them. We've got 25 contacts. We haven't had anybody join, but there is one brother who's ready for membership. One of the questions is, because it's in Tijuana, how would the membership work? We've had several events. We had a film viewing of two of Mark Dugan's close friends that were involved in the riot in Britain in 2011. We got a breakfast study group, which we had 9 people attend. We recently had the Black Power in San Diego event, which there was between 35 and 40 people there. We earned 2 active members and got a total of 5 memberships. One of them being George Jackson and 2 of them being family members. Outreach, we've been doing weekly outreach in Tijuana, weekly outreach here in San Diego, selling for burning spear, getting phone contacts. We did our first phone banking that was led by our membership coordinator, Tom May. In September, we sold 75 spears. In October, we didn't sell any spears. We basically sold the overflow of September one. We got 50 spears ordered for November. Future events, we have African International Film Series, a fundraiser with music and food sales, and a burning spear study group. And lastly, I just wanted to mention in PETA, Seattle had their first Indigenous People Charged Genocide community dinner. It was successful. 20 people came, including some USN members. 3 people pledged to join in PETA. One was a solid recruit and who has worked with Unión del Barrio here in San Diego, worked with the Uhuru Foods and Pies up in Oakland, and now lives in Seattle, and was able to be recruited to that event. In Seattle, there is $133, $20 for 2 student low-income memberships, and one North American pledge to be a $30 monthly sustainer. Since the convention, Seattle hasn't sold any spears, and they haven't done any tabling and outreach, which is the constitutional return out there.
Thank you, Comrade Justin. Alex from Oakland, California.
I'm Nicholas Barker. I was going to do the report. I was recruiting Valley, but I wasn't able to do it.
Hey, Comrade. Yeah.
But anyway, just to say in Oakland, our primary work right now is with the Rural Foods and Pies institution and with that, we are trying to strategize a way to push the spear sales out, which has been meeting radically. We are in the midst of Rural Foods and Pies campaign, which goes from October to December. It's very intensive day-to-day work. And through that process, we are selling spears, not in the best way that we need to. We have all the Rural Foods and Pies work. We have weekly meetings. We have mass meetings. Quickly there. Right now, we have hired a baker to moving our work forward with our product development and develop ways to have a lot labor-intensive work where we can just have 4 people doing different pies throughout the city, as opposed to like today having one booth with 4 people in it. So we're trying to strategize and work harder and not smarter. Through the process, institutional work, we're trying to dig in and strategize to have a deeper presence politically to push the spear more, to win people to join and participate in the mass work that we have through Rural Foods and Pies. Right now we have introduced combined, what can I say, committee meetings once a month, that's the second Friday of every month, and we've actually been bringing people into coming closer to a rural supplies or rural furniture store here in Oakland. Right now, we really have to build the strategy to make the rural house in Oakland the regional economic hub for the region that's called for in the party's Congress political report. So what we really do is one of the contradictions we've been having is having regular steering committee meetings with the regional committee. We started with 6 comrades with the regional committee. Now we have 3, 2 forces in Oakland and 1 in San Diego. And we have 2 new party members in Tucson, and we hope to bring into that process once we're complete with their probationary status. Now, in the institution, but we don't want to just leave it there. Our strategy is to win the masses of people into the work through the institutions, as well as putting the politics, putting the organization on the ground. We need to build a KDOM up here in Oakland. When the chairman was here in October, we won 3 new members at in KDOM event. And we just need to work. We need to fulfill the Western Region Committee. We need to build the Furniture Support Committee, and we just need to take the work to the next level. And the bottom line need to House stand really, as the chairman said, muzzle up and build this Western region to what it has capacity to do.
Well, thank you, Comrade Bakri. Comrade in St. Louis.
Uhuru, Chairman. Uhuru, Chairman, and all the comrades, and all the committee members. So here in St. Louis, we are currently continuing to fight for Keep 28. So right now with the Keep 28 committee, we meet every Wednesday, and we have failed at building a social movement. So we really had like a meeting to break it down, like to look at our POA, look at what we have been doing, what has been working and what has not been working, to bring the masses of people into, to understanding like this horrible corruption in St. Louis. St. Louis is a predominantly African city, the north side of St. Louis, and this corruption is really very, very corrupt. And so with the Keep 28 committee, like literally, there's no one else fighting for Keep 28 but us. But we have to get better at doing what we're doing. So we hashed out in this last quarter a better outreach plan that would, speak to like finding places in the cold weather, indoors, at liquor stores, churches, literally anywhere will allow us to come in and set up a table. We have been successful at, finding some locations in the 21st Ward and the 3rd Ward. I don't know what the background, it's a lot of backdrop noises.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and also saying that we looking at the terrain and trying to really be able to see where the African working class is by going to certain events, and then also introducing something I'm really excited about, and that's house like mappers. So the mappers that was laid out by a deputy chair, which is called like a 1-hour mapper where we have a PowerPoint and people can have house heavy events in their house, and we lay out a flyer, they invite their neighbors and friends to their house, and we have 1 hour, we have these events. And these would take place Monday through Friday is the only time that you can book a house event. And so it still frees us up to be able to do outreach on the ground in St. Louis, and also our Sunday rallies. So we constantly get engaged. As everybody knows, we opened up a international office here in St. Louis. But the IEC is bringing out, our POA and our plan to the next convention, where we want to have a storefront and a real office like the political report calls on, So the office that we have right now, we are saying that this is the international office that we're working out of. And also we have a booth at the flea market for Uzi in St. Louis as well, which is forming as a form of outreach as well with Uzi. So that's pretty much what's been going on in St. Louis. I'm really excited about this particular rally because to be able to, have a meeting to really, not be liberal and just really say that we got to get over ourselves and do this work and just see like how it moves forward to build a real social movement with T28 because this is a great strategy that was put forth by Chairman around the war reduction, and it really allows Africans back into political life and really deepen what the corruption that's been happening in St. Louis historically. So.
Thank you, Comrade.
Yeah, this is Ikenge. Someone needs to mute. We are hearing feedback and it's making it very difficult to hear. Everyone, if you're not talking, please mute, or we're gonna have to mute everyone. Thank you.
So, Comrade T'Challa.
Look at that.
See.
That's it.
Yeah, I just want to give a report on the Black Power Blueprint. So the Black Power Blueprint projects are continuing. So recently, the concrete pathway has been completed along with the foundation for the stage. I hope everybody can see that on Facebook and the various other media. We purchased a wrought iron fencing, and now the construction company we're working with will be fitting the pieces together so that we can go ahead and install it. The permeable pavers have been laid recently, so that's been the most recent completed part of the project. So now we have to really look at planting the trees and plants for the garden. And there's a real big question around the condition of the plants just because of the cold weather. And one contradiction is that Mr. Gary has been real sick, but he insists that we do have some time before we should plant them. And then of course, next we will have they'll begin working on building the stage and the stage covering. So we're looking forward to that. We're having regular local Black Power Blueprint campaigns, committee meetings, and are building that committee. So we meet every other Tuesday at 2 p.m. And then prior to that meeting, we have a 5:15 to 6 o'clock p.m. interview orientation. So we've been able to grow that committee some as a consequence of that process. Also, we are working to really expand that campaign, to really make it a real serious campaign. So we want to really engage the question of media, take on this NGA question, and we set a new date for that for January 4th. Just had a recent movie night as part of this process, and then we are looking at how we can take on the older persons and really force them to really address the Black Power Blueprint in a certain way. And we have some new enthusiastic members, Will and Helen, who are really taking on a lot of the work in a serious way and actually getting a lot of good results. We have at Quabbin Hall, we have 2 events today. We have a music as medicine kind of workshop, like that kind of stuff, and a 40th birthday party. And I was asked to speak twice at the event today, here at the last minute. And they will be working on an upcoming economic development / housing forum scheduled for May of 2020 or somewhere about. And it'll be as part of the One Africa One Nation Marketplace events, markets that happen during that summer. We also have an MLK Day of Service that we are planning for January 20th at the Uhuru House. And that'll be part of Africans One Big Strong as well. They'll help with that. And then we will also begin forming the committee and working on the POA to lay out, really plan for the market next spring, which should happen between May and September of next year. We have the upcoming and ongoing Musa Bantu Black Power Poetry and Open Mics. So Saturday, November 30th is the next one. And the topic is stop horizontal violence. And we really want to take that question on from African internationalist perspective. And then another recent thing that's coming up is we have a December 4th hearing in downtown St. Louis. We've had some trouble securing the permit for the work that's being done part of the Black Power Blueprint outlet market. They say we don't have enough parking, so we've been getting signatures and we're working on a flyer and organizing the community to meet us before we go to the meeting and go down to the hearing with us, and then get letters from various people throughout the neighborhood saying that we can park on empty lots and stuff that they have available. So that's what we have for Black Power Blueprint.
Well, thank you so much. Tucson, Arizona, well, and Comrade Sadie.
Thank you. I appreciate the words of you, Chairman, and all the comments you shared so far. I'd also like to unite with the words about the political education to our cadre and also leaders in our own region. In Tucson, where Hoyle and I live, the Afghan population is very small. It's about 2.5% of the population. And so we're pretty marginalized, and a lot of us have moved to the outskirts of the city. We've been disenfranchised in the political process. And, a lot of us who are doing well economically do so through
So much too close to it.
And so, I find that a lot of Africans in Tucson are those reticent to do themselves together. But even so, I do think that we still recognize the impact that we experience locally, national, and abroad. So I do think that Africans in Tucson are really ready to be engaged by the African People's Socialist Party and Cuba. Whenever I talk to I find that everyone is really appreciative and excited about the idea of a revolutionary political party happening in Tucson. Just recently, there was a Black Party money, and I think he sold almost is, and even talked about some of the party subjects. And yeah, everyone was really kind of. There's going to be another.
You can be in those monthly meetings.
And who comes on attending it, down in his spirit. I haven't a couple last. But because the spirit, we are starting to collect contact info of people that we engage with, so that we could set up circle education meetings. I recently presenting in other studios, so we do have a space to do it. We're just waiting on a little bit more organization and guidance from the party into moving forward.
That was it for Tucson.
That's all I have.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Comrades, I just wanted to unite with Sadie and appreciate everything that's been said. Sadie and I have been discussing, hosting monthly meetings just to start off in Peter, only because it is two of us and we are still in development stages here in Tucson. I have set up an email where, as we begin to develop, Jason and Kalambai and other members that are in that email will be able to see what we're doing. We're trying to, unite with Impedum. I'm not sure how that process still works. There's still that confusion of uniting with Impedum. But that email is designed for us to begin that process of connecting with the Impedum throughout the state. And in our region, in any event, as we begin to develop, we hope to see more success. Although the people I have engaged here in Tucson are a little bit more, right wing, and it's a contradiction, or it's very difficult to get them on that revolution. And a lot of them, as Stacey said, are real hesitant to, speak out against the state and
just things. I mean, it's just the historical background in Arizona of the, why people are so afraid of calling out the state. But ultimately, we're focusing on building it. I really don't have much more to say other than we look forward to building a strong Impedum organization down here, because we definitely want to link our masses out here. Again, I appreciate everybody and to talk about, Comrade, I don't know how to pronounce the name, Zawayzi. Thank you for everything you have said. I mean, I think that was very powerful, and you were touching on a lot of things about the African identity and the question of African identity throughout Latin America and throughout these social movements. Thank you for that, and that's something as we organize Impedum down here, I like to really, focus on, because I get a lot of feedback when I say things. Me having the tone that I have, being brown and saying the things that I'm saying, kind of, calling a lot of attention, saying, hey, we're claiming African identity, we're imposing revolutionary politics, like that's what we're engaging in here. And so people are responding to it. So I look forward to building Impedum. I appreciate everybody saying what they said. I personally myself have not sold as many spears as I'd like to, but again, in the future going forward, we are pushing to host more events to where we can push more burning spears or what have you. Thank you, comrades. Have a good evening. I'm still tuned in here. I'm just gonna mute.
Well, thanks for coming, Joel. And nobody should hesitate to take that spear out by itself. I mean, everywhere you go, to the store, to an event, etc., take the spear. You can sell the spear. Let's go to Comrade Director, Adjunct Director Akila and Ai. Just talk briefly about the summation of the electoral campaign that we were engaged in St. Petersburg, Florida. Akila.
Real Chairman, I want to know if it's possible, because we got Comrade Tafari on Skype and he's able to speak, and I don't know how long that's going to be able to last, if we would be able to bump up his report.
Go.
Okay, Comrade Tafari? You're on, can you hear me? Bro.
Comrade Tafari is located in occupied Zambia, commonly known as South Africa. All right, Uhuru.
Uhuru Chairman, thank you, Comrade Uhuru Chairman. I don't know if I'm clear. Am I clear enough?
Yes, you're very clear.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Well, I think I missed out on most of the meeting, but I was able to get the part of the political education or the remarks you were saying about what is happening in Bolivia. So I want to appreciate that as a chairman, also to bring us into the understanding of the magnitude of our work everywhere we are. Because sometimes as we do this work, we think that we just performing a duty, but actually we have a historical responsibility that will actually affect everyone across the world. So so my report will be based on what we want to do in the next 2 months. So we're just getting into December right now. Some of the plans that we had initially, when we completed our plan of action, we weren't able to fulfill them, but we want to have some program for December. So we'll be having a meeting, a week-long meeting, instead of going to the other province for that country development camp that we had initially planned. We'll just meet here in this province in Gauteng for a week in one house to map out our trajectory for the coming year. And part of that is really fully participating in the upcoming plenary. We want to be actively there and participate like in every bit of that plenary. So we have to resolve the issues of connectivity, which seems to be a very big problem for us here. everywhere. I thought it was only for me here in Fortune, but it's also for the who are in Everton West and the other place called Albertine where Colin is located. So I want to say that INPDAM remains our main vehicle for getting our comrades and recruits into motion. So we're still recruiting with INPDAM. We're getting everyone through into the program via INPDAM. So the membership in the party is still low, but the good thing is that like all the comrades that we have are solid forces. They are solid forces. They have internalized the theory, and I can say that we are in the best position to can even initiate some economic development program. On my side, I'm about to close on plantation right now, so I'll have all the time. I won't be going anywhere. I want us to be able to meet with all the comrades in the party and really map out what we're going to do on December. And what that is going to include, especially with INPDAM, is that we're gonna embark on a campaign into the trains, because a lot of African workers use trains to go to these factories and workplaces, and these trains are in very deplorable conditions. They're in a bad state, and usually nobody talks about this. Sometimes people don't even know about this because most of the people, they use these minibus taxis, but a lot of people who use their trains, they live through some of the most horrible conditions that you can even imagine. So we want to go into those trains. I was talking to Comrade Zaked of South Africa that we must have some kind of petition with this. So this will be something new for us. I know we've been doing a lot of studies, but in terms of having something confrontational to the state and these companies that really exploit our people, we have not really had that experience. We've been doing things in the hood, we've been doing programs and studies and so forth, but I think we also need to go out there and engage with the people in their daily engagement with the system, trying to survive. So we're going to be doing that. I don't know exactly how the petition is going to work, whether we're gonna I mean, like, we can have a petition, but then is the petition going to have demands that we are able to, like, effectively follow up on, or is it just going to be a document? So I think it has to be something that we can take some action on. So, lacking the experience, I don't really know what to anticipate, but this is something that we really need to do. So for economic development, there are proposals that have already came in. We have a committee for that, but I cannot say exactly what's going to be done because we just want to consolidate that and be able to send it to the leadership of the ASI and see how that goes and what kind of assistance that we can receive from that. I don't know, maybe if I can get sort of a question maybe from the chairman in terms of what we're doing. Maybe I could respond better.
Well, thank you, comrade. First of all, I just wanted to say that I appreciate the leadership that you've initiated in terms of struggling for quality forces in the party, and by developing the party forces that you have there, and also using the process of recruitment through the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement is the main recruitment vehicle. I think for now that's going to work pretty well. In terms of the petition, we would really like to see what you're doing on that, because there is some experience throughout the overall movement in terms of how we might take on the struggle around the petitions, such as what what you were talking about. So if you can get out something pretty soon, get it to Comrade Secretary General Wavy and me, that would be helpful. And the same thing is true about the question of economic development, which is something that I've been pushing you on for a while now. You need to say what it is that you're trying to do and give that information to me and also to the deputy chair of the party so that we can look at what our possibilities are in terms of the project that you have in mind. And we may even be able to offer suggestions of other kinds of projects that you can take on. I'm glad that you are talking about trying to confront the contradictions that people have on the ground there. I think there's going to be a good experience. It's going to help to shape the cadre there. It's going to help to define and shape the cadre there. And also to the extent that we can engage with the people like that, it enhances the ability, the fighting capacity of the people in these communities, so that they're not just recipients of bad treatment and what have you, but they learn through this process of how to fight against the system. And we take science into the question too, because that's what the people need from us probably more than anything else, to be able to take revolutionary science and helping people to understand the basis of the contradiction that's confronted with. So that's what I would say to that. And it's good to see that that you are engaged frequently in various kinds of ideological work. I think that you should, be, and I think you are in contact with Comrade Director Akile, and that's great, because I think much of the work that we are all going to be engaged in moving forward is going to revolve around really propaganda and becoming just revolutionary propagandists, spreading the theory and philosophy of African internationalism and finding popular means by which we can do that and consistent means by which we can do that, and creating different platforms that we can put forth our ideas and things to the masses of the people. So, Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman. Yes, I remember the response and Uhuru, Akile.
No, that wasn't me, Tafari. Keep going.
Go ahead, you were saying, Tafari?
Yes, Chairman. I was going to say that in terms of agitprop, there is really great potential there on that aspect, in terms maybe the digital aspect of it, and also our ability to reproduce some of the material. I know Asa is a good editor, and he's taken a lot of documents that have been produced over the years and reproduce them in maybe in better formats. So I was going to say that. Yeah, I think maybe we have to get, or I think we have to improve maybe the bridge between the agitprop we try to develop here and the agitprop in the headquarters there under the leadership of Director Akile. So yeah, I'm looking at things like books, the books in the party, your books, Chairman, the fact that we can supply them here when people ask about those books, and we can really help them get them. I think that's a contradiction in itself. I think maybe when we do some outreach or tabling or something like that, we should be able to have some of these books, or in fact all of these books, and even for us to be able to access them.
I agree, and I think that's something that Comrade Director Akile should really look at, and then come up with a definitive kind of approach to how we can make that happen. So it's no longer just a discussion, but at least some kind of plan about how we can make that happen. I think that's extraordinarily important. I believe that one of the most important things that we engage in now is the whole question of propaganda. And and taking African internationalist propaganda out among the masses of people, especially right there in occupied Tanzania. So I think that's true that we should do that, and I also think that it might be helpful to investigate, Comrade Director Akile. You know, there used to be things that we did in local organizations rather simply, where we could do our own pamphlets and things like that. We can do a good-looking pamphlet, a professional-looking pamphlet, and we can do the printing and stapling of it ourselves. They used to use something that they call like a mimeograph machine. I'm sure that they have something like that now, that you know, a small office could produce its own stuff, could make our own, again, pamphlets, and that could help us to get them on our tables. And I've also I've not quite ever understood what our limitations are about being able to get the British newspaper printed there in South Africa too. So that could be something that would occur. But I would think it's helpful if, in fact, if it's possible, Comrade Director Akile, to initiate some kind of meeting with the comrades there in occupied Tanzania, where we can talk, you know, in concrete terms about production and distribution of propaganda, and then the party materials, getting them all there, everything that is possible for us to get, books and things like that there. What kind of expenditures are we looking at, one, to make that happen? And then secondly, I think we should investigate the possibility of producing some stuff. For example, there's stuff that's been written by Asa, by Comrade Safari, that collectively could make pamphlets and things like that that could go on tables as well. We need to investigate what our possibilities are. Like I said, I'm no longer familiar with the, you know, what it would take for that kind of reproduction. We used to do it as on a regular basis, doing local work here in the United States. And so that's something that we should investigate. So perhaps, Comrade Akile, you can initiate a process through which you can begin meeting with those comrades in occupied Tanzania to talk about how we're going to get that propaganda there.
Uhuru, Chairman.
Uhuru.
Yes.
This is your video. We have myself, Aida, and Marika had a previously scheduled meeting that we'll be getting off. We have to get off the call at 3:30 along with some other forces for the convention that we need to have discussions about.
Okay. Sounds like you're the source of some of that static that we were trying to get rid of too. All right, comrade, thank you. So Akile, let's go ahead and move it.
Uhuru. So in regards to the report about the campaign.
Yeah.
Uhuru. Well, I just really want to appreciate this meeting and the chairman, your leadership, and that brilliant overview and analysis. And just to say that the party is winning. And I'm sure all of you on this call were watching, looking at what was happening in St. Petersburg in regards to this amazing electoral campaign that the party was engaged in. And there's going to be the cover article for the Spear for December is going to have the summation of these elections. And I wanted to just bring the numbers of what, the party did, everything it is that we did, and just, it was a huge agitation propaganda piece that we were engaged in, as well as, penetrating this arena that, that the party it's the really only organization that's effectively done bringing revolutionary politic into this area. So throughout the course of the 6 months that we were engaged in this election, we attended 16 out of 16 forums or debates. We sent out 36,300 mailers. We knocked on 4,267 doors. We made 8,500 phone calls. We were able to do 69,960 robocalls, 18,272 text messages, 36,000 of a newspaper that we produced ourselves called The South Side Speaks were dropped. And that was all the forms of mass communication that we were involved in to get the message out about this campaign. And just to say that those drops, I mean, that takes human resources in order to get that newspaper out. So that means people drop thousands and thousands of doors. I don't know how many miles, that is over the course of 6 months. But we printed 40,000 and got out 36,000. So that's just really incredible. We produced 43 videos on Facebook, most of which went viral. And the famous reporter video called The Elephant in the Room, that's what we ended up titling it, reached 167,000 views on a combination of 3 platforms. And that was the video that, garnered international attention. And we had, in 1 week, raised $13,000 because of the circulation of that video to our campaign. We had over 1,000 donors to the campaign, and the average contribution was $27 per person. And we had over 100 volunteers, both local and nationally. People from around the country participated in phone banking for this campaign. And then on the ground, we had just an amazing campaign organization filled with just really united volunteers that went out with us as early some days as 7 a.m. And towards the end of the election, we were out from 7 to 6, sometimes even later than on those days, and people were there for the entire time. So that's how committed these forces were. We made 36 different candidate/campaign appearances. And most likely there are more than that, but the objective was to be ubiquitous, to be everywhere we possibly could be. So we went to just a whole bunch of different places, meeting hundreds and thousands of people. Big parades, markets, festivals that were going on, churches we were at every single Sunday. And we went to Democratic Party meetings, which was a part of the strategy that we employed during this election. And we had even won forces from the St. Pete Democratic Club, including its president, to openly support this campaign. And that is something that we are looking at right here in St. Pete in terms of penetrating the Democratic Party, and seeing what we can do, working this for future elections and the whole building of a social movement. So 36 and more, I'm sure, of different events that we attended. We had 16 interviews or instances of media coverage, including our own The Burning Spear newspaper. We got coverage from media entities in Texas, Alabama, California, and Canada. The one in Texas is African Diaspora News Channel with this guy named Phil Advise, who has 1 million subscribers on YouTube and played a really instrumental role in, making this campaign international, putting us on his platform. And that's where most of those resources, those donations, they came flooding in after he posted it on his channel. So we were interviewed on there more than once, and he also posted our videos reoccurring. So just really powerful. And of course, we won the primary. We were one of the persons to win the primary election on August 27th with 655 votes. And then in the general election, we got 6,022 votes. So despite the fact that, in total, I think there were, maybe 28 or 29,000 people that ended up casting their votes. And the incumbent in this whole rigged electoral process, it did exactly what it needed to do for the bourgeoisie. And the incumbent won, I think, 23 or something like 24,000 of those votes. But we went from 655 votes to 6,022 votes in the general election. We got votes from every precinct throughout the city, which is really surprising when you just think of the makeup, which is a majority white city. Africans only make up 23% of the population. And throughout every precinct, we got votes, and not just like 1 or 2, but from the range between 30 and 50 votes in every precinct of the city. We also gained popularity in District 7, which is where we were running. we gained popularity by 13% compared to the primary election. So we went up based on all of the work it is that we were doing. And District 7 is a majority African district. And, just goes to show that if we had been able to work only that district and it wasn't a citywide election rigged against African people, that we could have really wrapped up a lot in District 7. So those were the actual numbers. And it's just to show the incredible work that the party did, all the victories that we achieved in this campaign, including being the only reparations candidate and being the reason why people had to vote either for or against reparations. The only thing challenging the status quo, which they had to admit themselves, bourgeois media had to say, this candidate is the most distinguished candidate from all of the others. And her candidacy represents the people versus the system. This is stuff that they had to say themselves. So it was just really, really powerful. And that is the concrete, numbers of what this campaign achieved. So, and I'm sure it's more. And in fact, calculating how much we reached all around the world, because this election wasn't just something that was taking place in St. Petersburg, as indicated by the flooding support that we got. So this is something that the party is going to be able to, use. And again, we set the standard everywhere. In every place that we go that the party wants to go, we set the standard for what it looks like. And we did that same thing. And we also became masters at running for office. So, Uhuru, that's what I have.
Oh, thank you, Comrade. Yeah. Is there someone on from Huntsville? I know that Cobain is in the store.
Oh, Chairman, I'm here.
Oh.
Comrades, I do appreciate the overview and all the reports that has been given. I'm here in LA now, and the primary work here is, of course, in LA to make it, the economic and political hub of the whole region. And there's a lot of work going on within LA as we speak right now. Dr. Aisha Fields is in West Africa and Senegal now to build relationships on the ground in Gambia and Senegal to be able to make connections with seamsters to consistently have independent connection within LA and tailors and people on the ground in Senegal and the Gambia. We have been raising resources through a webinar, through a raffle ticket that we did on a week ago, and the raffle ticket will be pulled for a TV on the 24th to have a summation meeting of a trip on Sunday, November the 24th. Where, like I said, where raffle ticket will be pulled and then get a summation of what, of her trip to
I did.
There were contradictions in the webinar that
doesn't mind being reminded.
we couldn't figure out some things and we had to go strictly to the comrades that were on the ground with her in West Africa.
It wasn't on there.
And so we would be, make sure that those type of contradictions don't happen again. We have different events coming up in the store. We have a paint and sip on December the 14th. We do paint and sips every once a month to raise resources for Zenzele and the programs of AFDEP. And they are successful. We have a Margaret Garvey youth program that we do roughly normally get anywhere from 10 to 15 kids from the community to participate in those programs. And we'll be preparing to do our garden work. We have 2 lots here in Huntsville now. We'll be doing garden work. The NTU program, since Kundai even specifically leading the NTU program, we're having consistent meetings for NTU, bringing new people into this process. Just last week, on Tuesday, which is our NTU meetings, Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. We were able to, win a 2 additional volunteers who actually participated in the following Sunday, which was last Sunday's meeting, and they helped out with some of the tasks there. So the NTU has been bringing more and more people into the process under Kundai's leadership. The main project that AppDev is involved in is really rebuilding AppDev here. Right now we have upward of 50 members in AppDev here, and all of them are not active. And we are going through the list at this particular time to see who can win to actively participate. And we also right now are in the process of trying to build an impedum off of there was a young African that was killed by the police here by the name of Dana Fletcher, and there's been a lot of motion around it. And we intervened in NAACP meeting where they had, I think, close to 300 people at the meeting. We were able to intervene, myself and Kundai, and they tried to cut the mic on both of us, and the people, you know, was adamant about continuing to let us speak, and they had to concede, and we continued to organize, and from that we were able to organize a Black Emergency Control of the Police meeting. With those forces, we will have our second meeting on tomorrow, and we just had one of the volunteers here, phone banking, which we got 15 confirmations for tomorrow and 5 maybes, and even most of the people that said they couldn't come, it was as a conflict of time and work, but they wanted to continue to be informed and see how they can participate in this process. We have since that the police murdered the young African, we, like I said, been intervening and in outreach. We have passed out like 460, close to 500, like Know Your Right cards, and we continue to making more cards, and even barbershops are asking us to bring some to them to put out in the community, and we have our information on it where people can, you know, call and confirm that. We sold all of our October spears, which was 100 spears, and we just recently got our November spears, which we'll be putting out. We put them in a store and a couple of other stores within the city, well, 2 other stores in the city of Huntsville, and then also in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And we also have other events in LA, like we have a yoga that we do every other Tuesday and every other Sunday by a young African here in the city that he does yoga like every other Sunday and every other Tuesday, and that's the thing that's going on right here in Huntsville at this particular time. Over.
Thank you, comrade. Chimonito. From Houston, Texas. Is Houston, Texas in the house?
I'm here, Chairman.
Comrade.
So AFTEP has been having meetings on Friday at 5 p.m. We currently have been having meetings in the garden. We're going to be changing our meetings to Saturday, and we're going to be changing it from outside to inside because of the weather here is starting to get a little bit chilly. We have been planning for the Memorial 4K thing, and originally we had planned it to happen on the 17th, which is his birthday, and I'm self-critical because we weren't able to make it happen by that day due to contradictions with the location. So we have to move the date back to the 23rd. But we have a location, we're all set to go for the 23rd at 3 p.m. We're going to be passing out flyers for the event on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, and putting up an Eventbrite this weekend. Not Eventbrite, sorry, a social media event page this weekend. We also have 2 AppDev volunteers who previously were involved in the work that moved away, that moved back, and we're bringing them back into work mainly through this memorial right now, having them help to plan and prepare for that, but also through
helping to weed the garden. We're currently behind on weeding, so we're working on a plan to overcome the contradiction of being behind on this year's current harvest. Aisha gave us an apt contact, Jaleel Nash, who has a lot of experience with gardening. He's helping us to come up with a gardening plan to be able to week by week know exactly what we need to do to get back on track. Travis, who is one of the recruits we previously had that we're trying to recruit to actually join for being a volunteer. He's previously been very active in doing like the actual on the ground gardening work, and he's going to be instrumental in the plan with just getting us back on track with getting the garden back where it needs to be as far as the harvest. The biggest thing that we're going to be planning for next is Juneteenth. We're going to start planning for that on next month. And going into Juneteenth, we want to organize a campaign to make the garden beautiful. And it's a project that's going to include building things in the garden, such as benches. We have a plan to put a greenhouse in the garden, and really just to make the garden a place where the community will want to come and to want to volunteer and to want to hang out at. One of the main contradictions in Houston has been that our outreach hasn't been consistent. And we ordered Spears for this month to help to overturn that contradiction. And we also are developing a steady outreach schedule to include the new forces that we have on the ground, which will be very helpful just to overturn the contradiction with not having consistent outreach. That is all I have.
Thank you, Comrade. I'm glad to hear that coming out of Houston. I'm really glad to hear that. So right now, there are just a few announcements that we want to make. And in the beginning, we start out with Comrade Alikia, who will be talking about 2019, December 14th and 19th through 19th, Marcus Garvey Legacy Cruise.
Hello, Chairman, hello, comrades. I do want to just start off by saying that I'm really appreciative of this meeting that we have. I really appreciate all of the information that Luigi brought as well, in particular, especially summing up his trip in Venezuela. So with that, the Marcus Garvey Legacy Cruise is taking place this December from the 14th to the 19th. And it is a fundraiser cruise for the African Socialist International, which is, all of the African People's Socialist parties around the world. That's US, that's African, that's wherever we are. We make up the body of what the African Socialist International is. So this is a yearly or almost yearly fundraiser held, which, gives our membership a time to be away from our computers and our laptops for about a week. We usually invite other people. We open it so that anybody who wants to attend with us attends. And then, of course, as I said, the fundraiser cruise. This year it's going to Bahamas. Nassau, Bahamas, where we will have an event hosting the chairman there. We have been working with Charo, who was there, with Alex as well. And when we get to there, we will have our own tour separate from what other cruisers will be experiencing, as well as a party event in, while over there. And then we'll also be visiting Freeport and not Mahogany Bay. Another something K in Bahamas, Half Moon K, Bahamas. So for those, if someone is interested, it is still space on the ship and in the group for people to register. That would be done through the travel agent. You can find her info at uhurulegacycruise.org. The committee is also beginning the groundwork for the 2020 cruise, which will be to Jamaica in celebration of the 100th year anniversary of the red, black, and green flag. So you can look out for announcements for that soon. The committee is also still accepting donations, and that can be made at uhurulegacycruise.org as well, just so that we can make sure we have a successful cruise this year, and also help kick off our work for next year.
Thanks, Comrade. We can go to marcusgarveylegacycruise.org and get more information on that. And February, from the 1st to the 3rd, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be having the first plenary from the 7th Congress. And that's going to be in St. Petersburg, Florida. The 3 days will, in conference, will also include participation from the African People's Solidarity Committee and the Solidarity Movement. So, and the title of that, the slogan is Vanguard Up, the Unity of Practice and Theory. So please look forward to that because you have to be there. Everybody has to be there. Start preparing for that right now if you haven't already begun to do that. I think that, I'm not sure if there's someone here to report on the annual convention. I heard that Kamal yesterday and Malika and others had to leave. So that convention is going to be on March 27th through the 29th, and that's going to be held in Philadelphia. So people should prepare to participate in that and to make whatever other kinds of contributions that can be made. On April 10th through the 15th, 2020, the Black Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparations, under the influence of the African People's Socialist Party, will be holding an electoral campaign school in St. Louis, Missouri. And this will be held at the Uhuru House on West Florissant. And if the weather permits, we may be able to do it even on the outside venue that is being worked on right now in terms of One Africa, One Nation market site that's being developed there. And this electoral campaign school is achieving greater significance daily just because so many people are locked into this process. As part of what we were talking about earlier in terms of recognizing the significance of revolution, locked into the process, so many people of elections being the only means by which we can advance an agenda for the liberation of African people. We've used this process to help to develop a national Black political agenda for self-determination, and we want to use this process to influence how Africans perceive the electoral process and to equip Africans outside of the African petty bourgeoisie to be able and capable of running for office on a campaign that speaks to the interests of the African masses. So effectively, that's what we have in terms of announcements. Carmen Luigi.
Yes, sir.
Well, Carmen Luigi, I just wanted to really express appreciation for your hosting this meeting, and also we have just completed the last item on the agenda, and with that, you can adjourn us.
Thank you, Chairman, for giving me the privilege and honor. It's really an honor to be asked to do that. What I just had to say, we're just coming from Caracas. We have a historical task on our shoulders. We can't move forward if we don't overturn all the opportunities, philosophies, organizations standing on our way. And you know, one form, this opportunity takes form is Pan-Africanism. Everybody there was a Pan-Africanist. And you know, anything when you meet them, it's going nowhere. The masses can't move forward. They can't get where they have to get to. Because the Pan-Africans don't have revolution in the mind. Revolution is not on the agenda whatsoever. So that's our duty. That's our obligation. This is our mandate. And we go work harder so that sooner than expected, the world, the African people begin to speak of Pan-Africanism as a dead concept, or, you know, whatever that is, it has to become dead, and it's not shoulders. It's our obligation. So I would like to end there and thank you to the chairman for having the African People's Socialist Party to allow Africans to engage in these questions of life and death against white power imperialism.
Order, comrades. Vanguard up.
Vanguard up.
Vanguard up. Vanguard up. World.
Uhuru.
Hey, for those whoever's on mute. You got another one?
As do we.
Lucky you, Tim.
We might